Latest on the geopolitical news, the European Union announces a second front. The whole world is designated as the enemy. The world is the new enemy. I mean, what is going on? Flags outside the EU headquarters in Brussels, RIA Novosti. Yesterday, October 15, 2022, by Elena Karayeva. Europe is a garden. We created this garden. Everything about it works. It is the best combination of political freedom, economic prosperity, and social cohesion that mankind has ever achieved, end quote. Not Montesquieu, Diderot, or Rousseau, who saw the continent from the 18th century, the century of the Levantine Enlightenment, and therefore they could be forgiven for such a pathological style that borders on naivety. No, this is an excerpt from a speech by Joseph Borrell, the EU's High Representative for Foreign Affairs and Security Policy. Every sentence in the passage teeters on the edge of a wishful thinking, not to say it is a gross lie. There are no civil liberties as such, economic prosperity is lost, and social cohesion must be demanded by those who live in ethnic ghettos with little or no means of escape from them. Let's remember what van der Leyen said before the Italian election, saying that you better vote liberal, otherwise we won't be paying you the European Union funds. I mean, that is a total threat, not only for Italy, but for every member of the European Union. Now, going back to this, the head of pan-European diplomacy did not stop there. He continued, he said, the rest of the world is not a garden, but a jungle, and the jungle can take the garden by force. But building walls cannot be the answer to the threat posed by the jungle, although we, the gardeners who tend the garden, cannot ignore this danger. We must enter the jungle alone, he says. It is not, this is, I'm not making this up. This is real. Okay? It's not enough for the European Union, as has been said, to wage a proxy war with Russia. Its new opponent is the world that disagrees with the European system of values, with the European way of life, with the European system of imposing, among other things, by exhortation, its ideas about what is good and what is the harm, as well as perceptions of what exists on the other side of evil and good. If this honest analysis is not enough to understand the strategic and tactical intentions of today's decision makers in Brussels, that's where the European Union Parliament is, in Brussels, in Belgium, here is another quote by Borrell himself, though the audience was different. This time, his subordinates, the ambassadors who represent the European Union in the capitals of various countries of the world, sat in front of the main European diplomat. The EU's foreign policy chief has revealed the secret of well-kept European garden, quote-unquote. Quote, the source of our prosperity are cheap Russian energy carriers, which we have always received under valid contracts. In other words, Europe without cheap Russian energy cannot exist. We know that. Germany has been reliant on cheap Russian energy, and that's how Germany is a powerhouse of Europe. Now that there is no cheap Russian energy, or not even Russian energy, no energy, as a matter of fact, null, zero, zilch, Germany is gone. Effectively, there is no more Germany, or no more European Union, for that matter. So he says, the source of our prosperity are cheap Russian energy carriers, which we have always received under valid contracts, as well as access to the huge Chinese market for exports and imports. We moved production there, invested in the Chinese economy, and sourced cheap products. It was Chinese workers who were paid a small wage for their work, who helped us keep inflation under control and low for many years, not the central banks of European countries, end quote. So all the masks and gloves and all the please and only after you have gone out of today's united Europe. There's the beautiful, like the shiny hailstone on a hill, hello Mr. Regan, or a manicured garden, and then there's the jungle, the evil empire, quote unquote. Big, small, high impact, low impact, low impact. The enlightened Europeans, armed with positions from Voltaire's Candide, a paraphrase of the garden used by Borel right from there, but also with weapons, but also with methods of blackmail and intimidation for those who want to be convinced how this is done, as long as they look for an example, Belgrade. They try with threats to achieve the desired result. What are they threatening? Why are they threatening? So why are they threatening? Because during centuries of cultivation of the European political space, both the rules and the inhabitants of these countries have not learned to see anyone as their equal. With the Americans, the alliance, despite all declarations and assurances of sincere love, is also in general rather forced. The relationship resembles a very unequal marriage, in which European beauty and other virtues have been given in exchange for military security. Not to spend money to maintain armies themselves, but to sit under someone else's safety and protection, including the nuclear umbrella of the United States. Quote, "I'm a girl, I want to lend a hand," end quote, said United Europe when it needed to withdraw funds from its maintenance from naive Russia, which pumped and pumped oil and natural gas, and also continuously supplied Europe industry with other natural resources and other minerals, fertilizer, for example, whether it was the Cold War, whether sanctions had been imposed or were to be imposed, which had been and are still in place since it was created, the Soviet Union. Quote, "I am a girl and I have hired gardeners, me. They put in the garden, but I still want to get my hands on it," end quote, said United Europe's Today. And that is why the United Europe must be protected from the jungle of evil, quote unquote. In other words, United Europe, the European Union, even if it looks rather battered, even if its beauty is faded, its neck has long since sagged, its wrinkles are there, deep and irreversible, even with a strong laser still needs maintenance. Just as patricians and patrician women needed maintenance, that is, loose women, since they were cared for and provided for by the plebeians. Just as the European upper class had to be preserved, just as the European mob was bent from start to finish, in other words, bent as a slave. Successive revolutions, the mixing of social classes, and the proclaimed abolition of class barriers have only increased the number of those who require maintenance without ever looking in the mirror. Europeans, of course, recognize brotherhood, even equality, and in general, this is their main motto. But they are absolutely convinced that there are those who are equal, and those who are even more equal, and those who are more equal than the real Europeans, like that real-life princess from Andersen's fairy tale who felt a pea through a layer of feather beds and mattresses. It's time to say the following. Dear lovers of a well-kept garden that has withered, frayed, and in some places dried up, you live, and for quite some time, in a world where the values you tried to pass off as something truly important and universal have turned out to be cheap glassware. The code of laws and regulations you're so proud of does not even really work in the glorious city on the hill, quote unquote, because some of the residents have long since given up on all that nonsense, realizing that society has already rejected it anyway or otherwise. Your democratic processes are only good enough for you when they work to your liking with results you approve of, and if what happens is not to your liking, even through those same processes, you immediately call it a violation of, quote, international law, end quote, and you lash out like an immature concubine. In this long, uncomfortable, cuddly world, where all your whims were once fulfilled, you, the bearers of all justice, have long been unloved, unrespected, and unideal. You, tell us the secret, are only tolerated as the grumpy, the pretentious, and the very lazy who have lost touch with real life are tolerated. So of course you can praise your garden ad infinitum as long as you have enough power and declare an anti-jungle campaign, quote unquote. But to get to that jungle, you must at least have the resources. First, to get there, and secondly, to be able to at least tempt those jungles. You don't even have energy. You don't even have, Germany doesn't even have 2 days of ammunitions. She's given everything to Ukraine, as have a lot of European countries. Going back to this, and you have not had either for quite some time. And to be proud of your own manicured garden, weeding and spreading manure as fertilizer, you have to do it all yourself. With these manicured hands of yours, taking hoes and wheelbarrows, and you'll have to get used to the smells associated with the process of manure, as hot water has become a luxury. You like it, you don't like it, bear with it. Europe, even if you were once a beauty. I've translated this for you from a Greek article. Please leave your comments. Thank you for your support. Kindly support my Patreon account. The daily posts are 5 videos daily, and they are totally different from what I have on my YouTube channel. Thank you so much for your support and that you find all my content so interesting. You'll find the Patreon account details in the description box below.